what is central to the day for each of us? I don't have a center for the day, except right here in this area. I took a long time getting up this morning. I
Yeah, me
just
too.
I just wanted, I got a hot water bottle and put it on my heart. I just
Mm.
wanted something here.
Hmm.
It was strange.
That's one of the things I use coffee for, is I always hold my coffee mug right here,
You mean
or
like this?
hot water or whatever, it's hot.
Yeah, I put my hot tea here
Yeah,
too.
yeah, there you go. Yeah,
I
yeah.
can relate.
Well,
Yeah.
it helps if you have breasts.
It helps hold it up, right?
You're not
It
equipped
cradles it, yes.
to a cup of tea.
Yeah, I had some tea this morning, but I didn't hold it up. I was busy.
I haven't got there yet this morning. I got up late and it's been nuts already.
Yeah.
You realize just how unusual this is for someone from 100 years ago to have 3 hours separating our, our lives
Right.
is
And
just,
be able to talk in real time. Yes.
yeah, we're talking in real time, but 3 hours separates us.
Yeah. Yeah, totally
I mean,
different.
it's really crazy to talk to my friend in South Africa, Johannesburg. It's 7 hours, or it was at the time. I think it shifts with daylight savings and stuff. But yeah, it's well, or someone in Korea, it's 11 hours.
Yeah.
And
India's 13,
it's nap
Australia.
time, when we're talking on the Zoom.
And yet when we are in those connections, it's all now.
Right.
I got a little bit of hope and just sort of interesting. A friend of mine sent me a article on green hydrogen.
Green hydrogen.
Green hydrogen. It's something that happens naturally in nature between water and rocks. And so there's hydrogen all over the planet in pockets, and it wants to come up. It's really light. So if it's tapped, it's like, whoosh. It burns. What is it? It burns green. And the byproduct is water. And at night, it burns gold. There's no black or soot or anything in the flame. So it's a very clean burning gas. And they've discovered spots of it. And there is a company or two working on it, but it's really like under the radar. I don't know why. You would think the oil companies would just scoop right in and do it because they've got the technology and stuff, but they're not paying attention. So that the feeling is there's so much of it that we'll be able to have enough gas for thousands of years. Of course, they said that with oil too.
But my understanding is that the infrastructure is what stops them from doing anything new. The fact of doing the electric cars is unusual, that they've actually jumped into that as quickly as they have, the business minds. But I guess they see the writing on the wall there. They're not ready to do another one as well, I don't think. Plus,
but I think,
remember the Hindenburg, because there may be that within the, the
yeah, I don't know, but there's possibilities
hydrogen,
there.
that's dangerous.
Yeah, and it is because it has to be compressed, and the pressure to compress it is huge. And if you want to liquefy it, it's like, I don't know, 400,000 degrees. It's just huge number to make it liquefy. So, I mean, there are some issues with it for sure, but it tells me everything's new. Everything's going to have to be new. So somebody will figure out something at some point, and there is a possibility of maintaining a semblance of the life we've been used to instead of having to lose it entirely. if people get creative about it, which, I mean, without the amount of energy we have, our life will be really, really different. And right now, solar is not going to provide that, not to the extent that we use it.
Right.
Yeah, it'll provide some, and certainly heating and that kind of stuff, but not at the level that we use it.
I have a friend, well, was a friend, old time, I mean, 30 years ago, but Richard Heinberg went on to become, kind of one of the primary experts on carbon, the use of carbon for fuels. And
Right.
so it started with a newsletter that he would write every month.
Oh,
But
nice. I like that.
he's I don't know if he still uses the name, I haven't really noticed, but he still writes a monthly report. And lately he's been talking about, the intricacies of of our whole distribution network for any power, any energy, and how to phase up, scale up, just suddenly becomes unimaginable. I mean, it's almost unimaginable to track down exactly this, the setup we have now to power ourselves with gasoline and to distribute that gasoline. I mean, it's incredible, the pipelines and so forth. It all needs to change.
Yes. Yeah,
For
yeah.
electric, it just all needs to change. And the way of living needs to change. Those batteries don't work in 0 degrees.
Right.
It just like 30% output is possible. And high heat also inhibits their use, but nowhere near as badly. And he just keeps feeding us with all these different factors so that you can sort of keep it in perspective. There are no bandwagons here.
Right.
Any one we choose takes huge commitment.
Yeah. Yeah. And some companies have the capacity for that commitment, but they're not doing it. So it may come up from a different way. I mean, there's more than one way to skin a cat, always.
And he used to say, we need to stop the oil use immediately, natural gas use. He doesn't say that anymore. He says any transition, I mean, if we were to try to transition to electrical right now, it would cost trillions upon trillions of dollars. People have actually done studies, which nobody's going to cough up. And it would take so much use, we couldn't pay for it.
Right.
We couldn't power the shift, the oil and gas, without creating carbon bomb. Probably the only way it could possibly happen is if we transition them together for many years until we get to the point where the electrical power output can begin to power its own transition. So we're not, it's incredibly complicated, and he keeps, with every month he sort of explores another avenue. He is somewhat hopeful, by the way, but only, but there's always the caveat that it's never going to work unless people truly start to open their minds and their hearts to something that is workable.
Well, I think we're going to be forced to it. I mean, I don't think it's going to be out of the goodness of people's hearts. I truly don't. I do think that, I mean, the way it was built, nobody planned it either.
Right.
It was built as people figured it out in slow pieces. And I think that's how it's going to happen again. And it's going to be outside
50 years to do that.
Well, yeah, but we are going through a transition. We cannot sustain where we are. We won't be able to. As things heat up, things are just going to crash.
I mean, just 15 years to do it in. See, that's,
Well, no, we
Crunch.
may have to take 50, but it will be a down and then a back up. You know, and I do think we're going to have to crash because nobody's willing to really think about or to shift their lifestyle at this point. When they're forced to, everybody will. So I think we will. And I think it is going to take a huge crash because we can't sustain it. And then we will build back. And that's where I think the green hydrogen is optimistic.
yeah,
I'm
no,
just hoping we can hang on to the internet through that. I don't know if we'll be able to, but it's such a magical thing and it makes things so much quicker and faster, but we'll see.
Well, if I could weigh in here, the when you first started sharing, Robert, you said it was unimaginable, and that doing, because if it's unimaginable, we probably should wait. We probably should back up to see the whole thing, because we don't.
yeah,
But we don't create that way. That's not
so
how things are created.
let me go toward where I'm going though, because to me, it's not building up. It's not making more.
Right.
It's not stripping all the damn minerals from all the damn mines to do electricity everywhere, which, you know, it's wrong thinking. It's wrong orientation. We don't have a systems view. We don't recognize that less is better, less is more. Now,
Right.
it really, honest to God, is less is more. And until we shift our value set, our frame of reference, our priorities,
And
you
our
know,
population.
build and build until it all explodes.
Yeah.
And we don't have to go there. In fact, we can't. I mean, if we pay attention, we won't.
Yeah, I think I think that the changes are, again, it's so interesting because even Bill Abernathy, one of the things he said, and I just went, oh, wow, was, oh, we can now design our future. You know, we can design our DNA, we can design our evolution. And I'm going, I don't think so. I don't think that's how it happens.
Get that from
That's such a top-down approach. The thinking that we can get outside of it far enough to be able to manage it from the outside. And that's not how life works. It works from the inside out. So it's all little things making their choices that make it happen.
absolutely.
So yeah, so I don't see us as doing that, as designing that. I see us as crashing, and then lots of little decisions will bring it back in a certain way. I'm really hoping that we can stay connected. I think that, but I don't know that that's because there's a lot of infrastructure there that needs to be maintained. And I don't know that we'll be able to do that as we crash. I'm just not sure that that's going to be possible. It doesn't seem like it to me. Maybe there will be enough remnants left that the people who do revitalize things can learn from what we've done and redo it in a different way. I don't
I'm
know.
totally convinced that it's not them that's creating this all. It's not up to whoever is in charge of all that crap. That it's our personal energetic transformation exactly where we are in the midst of the environment in which we live that makes all of the difference. It's vibrational, it's consciousness.
I would agree. And that's why the internet's been so important. I think that was a dream that we
Yeah.
all had, and we had it so strongly that we did create it. That's part of the reason why I'm hoping it will continue, because I think there's just this desire to be connected, and that's what's made this possible.
And it wasn't unimaginable. It hadn't been thought before, but those who created it saw the systems view. of the interconnectivity of the internet. The ones with the green hydrogen or whatever it is that they're pulling out of the ground and to power stuff, they're not seeing the whole vision. They're not seeing a system's point of view. And we can't afford not to anymore.
I don't know, because I would agree with you that in a way we can't afford not to. I don't know how we're going to get there. And that's why I have to come back to the planet, that if we can use a reference that is systems oriented, we're much more likely to get to that viewpoint. We've had a human-centric perspective, which is not systems oriented, it's very individual oriented. And so that point of reference makes it really hard
Right.
to have a systems view just inherently. But if we could reference the planet in everything we do and keep going to that outside reference and pulling it in, then we may develop a systems view, because that's how the planet works.
True.
I mean, that's, yeah,
If-
that's why I'm
if
such a
that
proponent of Earth.
if that meme is sufficiently embedded and understood in people.
Yeah, and emotionally connected. I mean, again, we got to go back to caring, and if we don't care, it's not
Well,
gonna.
that's what you're trying to do with your
Yeah.
podcast.
Yeah. Yeah,
When
it's, I mean, if the caring's not there, it's all going to be cerebral again, and we'll talk ourselves out of it, because you can always talk yourself out of your mind.
always backs up to me, to you,
Yeah.
always. Here, it starts here. Everything.
Everything.
Change.
I think we have to come to grips with the fact that we truly are creators. Like,
Yeah.
nothing
Yes.
would exist
Yes.
if I didn't create it in every moment.
Yes.
The material substance is as diffuse and effervescent as I can possibly imagine. I mean, when you really get down to what science has uncovered in terms of what happens at the atomic level, there's nothing there except
Right.
energy, lots of energy. And we are the transformers, every single one of us, and every animal and every plant, everything that lives transforms that energy into living substance. And we happen to settle, agree on physical substance at all as well. So if we can do that, we truly can do anything.
Yeah.
So Richard Heinberg, I'll cite him again. He I should have said this first, actually. One of the primary things he's been writing about for 6 months now is that the most important thing we can do is tap into conservation. Just, in other words, efficiency. If we use what we have efficiently, it's like the equivalent of burning, 50% of the oil that we're burning in any given year. I mean, each year, it's like an incredible gain. So he's beginning to work at the level of, people who are concerned about, the technological systems that run our planet. It's beginning to look at it in terms of, truly systemic orientation as to, how we juggle all these parts. And I realized that that's really what I'm talking about when I talk about unimaginable. When you start factoring in the limits of the earth limits, that's when it becomes unimaginable that any way.
Okay, that's right.
We can get out of it. And you were talking about more the imagination of, possibilities and potentialities, and this is how we create. And I agree that that's imaginable. It's happening all the time. But when you're faced with severe limits, and yet everything you're working with is based upon more of the same, it's unimaginable to get any we can't get beyond
Really.
it. I
Yeah,
mean, yeah.
cities are actually starting to grapple with some of this. London in particular has discovered that they need to have an understanding of how energy is used in the city, and they have no idea.
Mhm.
And that it needs to be integrated so that it can be measured and managed as a whole instead of all the pieces and parts that they've got. So in little ways, we're doing that, but we really hate limits. We really think we can transcend them. And we've been able to borrow from the future and borrow from other life forms, quite literally. And now we're at the edge of that. So we're going to have to stop that. The no waste. I like no waste better than I like more efficient, because
I do too.
the efficient tends to want to eliminate and make things right here instead of the dispersive thing that really needs to happen in order to keep the whole alive. I mean, we do that with rivers, we put them in cement channels, and that's not what a river's for. It doesn't help. So to really not have waste and to understand that interconnection, that seepage needs to be there, but it needs to be appropriate, I guess.
Yeah.
It needs to be seepage that is used. And that's an inherent part of the system, not extraneous to it.
Well, they also efficiency. I totally accept your concern about using the word efficiency, because nuclear power, there's a whole new push now for these small nuclear reactors, which do not have the same safety issues. And in fact, at a small scale, there may not even be significant waste product.
Yes, I've heard that.
You're producing just tiny bits that can then be utilized in something else, rather than this mass of nuclear waste that we can think of nothing better to do than to hollow out a mountain and bury it. But we here in Georgia are facing this because we have this monstrosity being built down, south of us here, our new nuclear plant that supposed to cost 7 to 10 billion, and now is up to 35 and counting. And that was built at that size because of efficiency. I mean, you're absolutely correct. This is a misleading concept. I mean,
yes.
Or solar farms. This don't work either.
Right.
They kill everything.
It needs to be dispersed on everybody's house. It's the dispersive that makes it effective. Yes.
And hydrogen. If you tried to do the hydrogen at that scale,
exactly in the
there
same
may
model.
turn out to be a localized method that would work fine. Great.
And there is.
But you do it at that scale and it destroys.
That's right.
That's
right.
the efficiency you're talking about. So I totally agree. The waste is a better way of looking at it.
Yeah. Well, and nature's distributive.
Yeah, nature doesn't work that way.
It's inherently distributed. It has to be. It has to go all out instead of in. Yeah.
I mean, look what happens when nature makes a mistake. You get the Grand Canyon. You know what I'm talking about? It's huge. I mean, it's very beautiful and everything, but obviously, if
it took a long time.
If it indeed was worn away by water action, which I don't totally buy, there may have been an earthquake or two helping out, but it's that's what happens when things get gigantic.
Yeah. Nature's really clear about size, that you can only get so big, and distribution is really key. Yeah.
Or look at the Himalayan plateau. It actually controls weather throughout the world.
Yes.
It's
and the Amazon jungle too. Yeah.
Yeah, the Amazon jungle.
And there's a place in
Well-
Africa also that does that.
Yeah, I mean, so these do exist, but there should be a cautionary tale there, that the implications are humongous.
Well, and they're levers. They're not accretions. They're levers for moving air and water.
Yeah.
They're leverage points. They don't hold things. They allow for movement. Yeah.
If I were in charge of the world,
You are in charge. I bequeath you the.
I would start with a public service campaign. I would start every new initiative with a public service campaign that integrated who we are as living beings on the earth with whatever the hell it is that we're doing to it. I would start with a public service campaign about who and how we are, about the vibrational energy of everything, about that everything exchanges and becomes something new. And I mean, I would, I want to do that. I try to do that sort of when I talk to people about life. You know?
Well, I kind of think this is happening again, using the internet, as Kathryn said.
We're so human-centric though.
Um,
And we're not even, I mean, I want to say, just because I want to, we're not even human. We're organisms.
No, we are human and we're
We are
special. in
human
a way.
organisms.
We need to
But-
understand our intrinsicness.
Human is only an adjective.
but, but gatherings like this one, and and I'm sure all of us are, taking participants in many of them. It's this web that's, or this radiation that goes out. Each one of these creates a source of radiation, goes out, and we take it and enlarge, the output by working with others, and then they take it out again. It spreads it out further. That is happening now.
Yeah.
They say 90% of the internet is pornography. Or
I don't believe that.
some crazy.
I never listen to what they say.
It's like,
Yeah.
who cares? We already know that is being propagated. Who cares? What's important is to focus on what we are, the propagation that we're a part of. That's all we can do, and really mean it, and really
Right.
throw our energy behind it. And, let's hope we win out. I mean, there is kind of a battle going on, a battle for the hearts of the world. There's no
Yep.
question in my mind.
I would agree.
Energy flows where attention goes. My job is to keep my energy on what I want to see, what I want to feel, what I
Yeah.
want to be. What
Or
is
even you could say what you do see, because I've read your poems, Ani. You already do see. It's not want to.
true?
Yeah.
I do.
And I see. Kathryn definitely sees, and so
Mhm.
many others I could name.
Yeah.
I mean, that's why I read Richard Heinberg's stuff, because he sees it, but he has
Can you send us
expertise.
the link to his Muse thing?
Oh, get
Or
in
how
touch
does that work?
with Post Carbon Institute,
Oh, yeah, I know them.
and he's one of the fellows there.
Okay.
So his newsletter is one of the offerings, as part of the grouping. But I mean, I've known him since the late 80s. I had just a little fun fact. My father was getting pretty decrepit and losing his mind, you know, and my mother had him tell his stories. He had some incredible stories about the creation of Pan American Airways, which he worked with for 45 years and really significantly helped build. So she said, you got to get these stories out. So she had the stories transcribed. And then we were all taking the time to read it and give suggestions, edit it. So I asked Richard if he would be willing to edit it. He already had several books behind. So he read it. And he said he started it sort of just as a favor to his friend, but he wasn't sure he was going to get very far. He said he stayed up all night and read it, but then he said, you know what? I loved it, but I just cannot take the time right now. So that's the kind of guy he is. And that's the integration. We're all integrated in things like that. It was because of that association that, of course, his newsletter came out. I followed it for close on, 35 years anyway.
Oh.
And I don't have any direct contact with him now, but it really doesn't matter. Well, it is kind of direct. I mean, I've been on Zoom meetings with him, sort of thing, but they were 55, 60 people there. But these things, they keep radiating out. Yeah. I'm beginning to find that more and more since we have so many years behind us, but I'm beginning to be able to see, just what the association.
Say more about that. Go inside that.
Yeah, what the associations have become, seemingly small, maybe meaningful at the time, but small events, meetings, feelings way back when. I can see the projection of it after 30, 40 years, even 50. Like an old friend from 50 years ago showing up in my life and suddenly becoming, very important part of it. That happens from time to time.
Hey, can I share?
I just reconnected with a group that I've known for probably 40 years. The founder of it and I both taught at the Integral Institute of California in the 90s. And I, for the first time, went to his group. He's been inviting me all this time, and I just never. He was part of the, all these things fail me, the catalog that was put out, the Back to the Land movement and all those. Yeah, the Whole Earth catalog, and there was a whole group of people that were kind of in that, and they were doing all this kind of stuff with business and thinking new things. And so many of them have gone to the far right. It's really amazing. Yeah. So I was in this meeting and I'm shocked at how little they've progressed. Actually, they've not moved into this new space. They were there in the old time and they did not carry it forward. They've all skittered off into other directions. It's just strange. I didn't hear a lot of new thought. I didn't hear new understanding. I heard a lot of people still struggling to get their arms around where we are. And the old people who'd started it, only one of them or two of them was still around. And when they talked about these people, we were told, no, they've gone off into the far right. They're all doing they're Trumpers. It's just, I don't know. It's really strange. So yeah, I don't know. The world is shifting in an interesting way.
There can be some very surprising, positively surprising events. Like I have this one friend, I was actually Zooming with him yesterday. He's from Germany and in Germany. And he's always sort of made me gulp because he's just well informed about the workings of throughout the galaxy. of the galactic forces of good and evil. And,
Okay.
and I think he knows that I laugh a bit at it. But yesterday he started talking about the healing work he's been doing. And that was solid. I mean, he spoke with authority. And I've been doing this and I've had this effect, and and just this is how it made me feel, and I mean, all of this. And I was saying, wow, yeah, great work.
I
Nice.
had an experience last night I'd like to share. A friend called me up, said she had an extra ticket to the Libero Theater where this African group is singing, South African group. So I went, and it's like, oh my God, I journeyed through the 60s with them. It's like my involvement in the 60s, the world's involvement in the 60s, the freeing of South Africa, whenever that was, I forget when it was, but anyway, these men, just a line of men singing and doing movement stuff, but their voices,
Yeah.
the blend,
Yeah.
the unity, and the deep down earth connectivity that changed the world in a given period of time, somewhere in the 60s. And I went there because I was on the picket lines, and I was on the March on Washington, and I was in a Black college. And so I was in that movement, and them singing the way that they did, because there's a unity of voice.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And it's so hard for whites to do that. We
I've
just
never
don't
heard of
blend
white
in the
groups
same
do
way.
that.
Yeah.
It's deeper than, it's earth-based.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, it's body based. It's truly body based.
Same thing. Our bodies are earth-based.
Yep. Yep.
Elemental.
Yeah. Yeah. It's really, it's just, I've seen groups of white folks. I'm thinking now of my ashram days. One of the ashrams really did a lot of chanting. And other ashrams had a great deal of problems with that because people wouldn't blend. There were stars. There were people that wanted to, it just didn't ever coalesce because everybody's trying to do their thing, not our thing. And I've seen it often where people just, they don't hear other people. They're not resonant to that. It's just really funny. It's just really funny that whites have such a difficulty with
I tend to be like that. Because I can harmonize to anything, all kind of parts. And so that tends to be what, but what you're saying, I really appreciate, because you're talking about the value of one.
Yeah.
Oneness.
Really substituting yourself into that. You have to be part of it.
Because it becomes an energy field.
That's right. That's right. And people just don't do it.
Well, and you've both brought it up that we need to embrace that aspect of our humanity, that it is a oneness.
Yes.
Individual thing. I mean, it's been way overrated.
Yeah, I mean, the whole thing was their unison.
Yes.
I mean, because I could almost tell how that would feel. And that would feel so good to be in that kind of resonance with a group where you were more than your own voice. Your voice was amplified, your energy was amplified.
That's why singing in the fields and singing on the workforce, those kinds of things are so strong.
Yeah.
Singing through the Black movement,
Yeah,
gave them strength because they really knew they were together.
absolutely.
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
last night, I w- I recognize the community basedness of the movements that succeeded. Total and community based means earth based. People closest to the land are I mean, there was something earthen in their
Yes, yeah,
voices coming together as one. Elemental is like, yeah,
yeah. I don't share this much because it's just so prone to be weird. But I often think, when I think about humans being intrinsic, we are different species and there are differences, and there's differences between men and women too. So what are they really? What is the core of those differences? What is the unique gift that each of those differences offer?
those
And
different. What are you saying? Give
well,
context.
everything that you can clump together has a sense of itself, has an essence. So when you think of species, there's an essence there. There's something that holds those groups of people together as a thing, whatever that is. And it's not skin color. The skin color is sort of a marker, but it's not the essence of who they are. But I really do feel that there's something about Black communities and people that they offer that I don't see in other species.
Yes.
It is just there. So Hazel Henderson was onto this when she talked about, from an economic viewpoint, nation states, countries have an essence. They have something they do that nobody else in the world does, and that should be their economic contribution. They should be giving what is truly unique to them. There is no competition because nobody else does it. And that's what they should base their economy on, is the uniqueness that they are.
Oh, I
And
like
I think the same thing is true with species, that to begin to appreciate the gift that they give, that if you want that kind of resonance, that's where you go. And it's an interesting thought experiment,
that.
to see what we as whites contribute, because we also have an essence. We are not
Great.
outside of this.
Yeah, we should never denigrate our own gifts.
That's right.
And so we
But
need to just get our mind off what our, what our,
well, to appreciate them.
where we failed, because we haven't failed in so many ways. We need to remember that, focus on that.
Yes. Yeah, no, we have things to offer, but we need more clarity about what that is, and then how to blend the offerings of the other species in a respectful way. I hear the Native Americans talk about that. They say there's in some of their prophecies that when we all come together, and that's how I read that, is that when we begin to respect the essence of each of us, the red people, the white people, the brown people, that we will begin to see how we can tune that into a oneness. And that is the voice of humanity, because it's all of us. That there's something about that can happen. And we don't think about gifts. we have such a negative turn of mind. That's where difference, this idea of that we're different, instead of going, yes, we're different, how are we different, exploring that difference, savoring that difference, being able to really get our hands around what that difference is, and to treasure it and to bring it forward. I mean, wow, that's sort of an ecstatic understanding of what we can do. And I think that's how we're intrinsic, that we have been created with those gifts, and we've just ignored them. We just don't pay any attention. And that's true for us as individuals. We all have individual gifts. We all are unique. I mean, and we kind of know that, and it's irritating because I'll do this and you do that. And we do the same thing and you do it differently, and it gets in my way because I'm used to doing something and you have another way of doing it. And that's so natural. There's something about that that's very rich that we're just ignoring
Right.
because we're all unique. That's the thrill of life, is that we're all unique. And the other thrill of life is that that's important. That uniqueness, that specialness is what makes the whole rich. It's just, yeah.
Well, what's coming to my mind right now is Elizabeth Sahtouris, when she was talking about the transition from caterpillar to butterfly, and that involved letting go of some identity, some that the caterpillar.
Thank you.
Huh?
I've got somebody at the door, but my daughter said she'd get it.
Oh, that you have to give up a little something to be able to do that, because
Right.
it's not, I mean, it's individual, but the individual identity you kind of have to give up, but
Yeah.
to lend your gift into the
Right.
one.
It's a difference between collaboration and co-creation.
Mhm.
Because it's easy to collaborate, but everybody keeps their identity. You know, they just put their pieces together and the pieces fit, and that's good. But everybody knows what they did. But when you get into co-creation, that all disappears. You
I'm-
get something new, and nobody can claim I did this. You know, it was truly the melding. And so few people understand that co-creation. They can collaborate all right, but they can't co-create very much.
Last night I gave up the word co-creation that I've never been comfortable with, to collective creation, collective creation. Because co-creation has never worked for me, but collective, because that's how it happens. It's collective interacting with each other.
Well, it can be two people, you know, and I've had some wonderful examples of that, but they're rare.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
that's what we're after,
Yeah.
for us
Yeah.
to collectively create with each other.
Yeah. And I do think it's easier for women than men, in my experience.
I'm sure. Because
Well,
what? Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say about that. I've had some really strong experience the past few weeks with having read the Gospel of Mary. And at least this translation of it that I have by Marvin Meyer, it's like so absolutely clear. So we're in the so-called upper room at the day of Pentecost, and the men and the women are together, and they're celebrating the movement of spirit. And I know something about that. It can be powerful. In the midst of this, Mary approaches some of the others, and she offers this teaching that Jesus had given her. And the teaching it's described in there as the 7 steps to the gateway of heaven. And this is something, to take you another step, another 7 steps. I mean, to take you all the way through the heart. Now, all the boys, the good old boys, they're sitting there and they're just having a good old time, hooping and hollering, I'm sure, speaking in tongues, who knows what they're doing. And they don't see that because they're all for doing. Being is for women. And so, they couldn't believe that Jesus could love, a woman, more than them.
Right.
And so I'm reading this, and at the very end, it ends with the sentence, which I consider the saddest sentence in the entire Bible. It says, "And so they left the house to go out and preach and teach." And the reason why it was so powerful for me is that I was there. I'm not a believer. I don't know what I believe about reincarnation, but what I do know is that when something just totally hits me and fits, I was there in that sense. That's all I'll admit to.
Beautiful.
But I said, that is what happened. There's no question in my mind. And it just, and you can't go blaming one side or the other. The woman was offering something up as best she could in her power at the time, and the men were offering something up until they simply went and decided to do it. And they didn't meet, in the middle. The collective did not quite form. And I do believe that that's what killed it. The whole project that Jesus, the man, what he was after was to create this collective body. And so, it was just stirring because, I was there. I could sense, yes, I can see exactly what happened here. And in terms of gender, the specific spirit of each of the two genders wasn't concerned with race, although that was probably pretty uniform. I don't know, it may not have been. I mean, who knows what a society in Jerusalem was in those days. It could have had a great deal of heterogeneity. So it was mostly gender, but that was enough. And now we have racism, we have gender problems, we have gender identification problem. I mean, we have all this stuff that we've created to keep.
That's how I read the Garden of Eden. That's how Genesis falls for me. Is that it was the tree of separation is how I would phrase it if you're going to stick with the tree. And the choice was to separate that, and that kicked us out of the garden, quite literally. I mean, it's a perfect metaphor. It really is.
Or the Tower of Babel.
Babel. Yeah.
I mean, this is the tradition I was raised in. It's from the Bible, and so that was the difference of language. Okay, well, what's language? Language, according to the linguists and those who study language, is a direct projection of how you think. So it was different ways of thinking, different ways of being then. And so they just couldn't get along.
Well,
so obvious.
The gift of the male gender, in my opinion, is that ability to separate, because that is learned once the male child discovers it's not its mother. It was its mother in the womb.
Yeah.
All babies are the same as the mother in the womb. It's when you come out that you begin to discover there's a change or not. And that's something that the male gender has to deal with. And the female gender does not. The female gender does not separate into its own self until teenage years, kind of thing, where it becomes its own entity. But it's still not separate from the mother. It's not different from the mother. But the male gets that way early, and there's no support for it. Every individual has to deal with that awakening in its own way. And so there can be an anger at that, and that's carried through the entire life, with the woman being less than and dangerous and all those other things, those metaphors that come out, because it conflicts with the discovery that I'm not female. How do you deal with that? How can you make that okay for yourself?
A man a man is female, a female is a man. I mean, the left brain, right brain. I mean,
Yeah,
wait a
that's
minute,
not
wait a minute. I'm both. I have a relationship with myself. My
right, but that's not
female,
socially acceptable.
I
That's not your,
don't care.
well,
don't
but it's
It
not about
works.
caring. It's right, and it does, absolutely. But most people do not have that lived experience, and I'm talking reincarnation here, to
I
be
know
able to have that sense, enough sense of self to be able to make that integration.
that's
It
why the
feels
public
like
service campaign.
yes, it feels like a separation. And so that's just been floating through there because nobody's paid attention to it. Nobody's worked with it or
To
helped
what?
it or supported it.
How would you put it? Paying attention to what?
The separation crisis that males need to go through in order to become male. It's just, there's just no way around it. And every individual male does it by himself.
Yeah.
With whatever skills or he has. And if there's a model that has made that transition as an integration, great. But mostly not.
No,
You know, mostly it's really about separation.
I mean, for me, it was hitchhiking. And hitchhiking actually to the high mountains.
I hear what you're saying now.
In my case, the Cascades, and going and just spending time, alone.
Yeah.
And if I hadn't done that, now the mountains are still there, but the hitchhiking's no
Learning
longer.
to trust yourself allows for that
I
integration.
don't know what young men can do now.
Yeah, they're
No.
thrown into that.
I didn't hitchhike, but I went to Israel by myself, and I went to this place by myself, and South Africa by myself. And I mean, so I've developed my male capacity of dependence and taking care of and doing what needs to be done, because that's vital. And it's natural. The feminine part too is just there, but I've developed my male, and it's wonderful.
Yeah. Well, I had 4 sisters, so the feminine part was pretty powerful in my life. And they're all totally different.
Yeah, and Kathryn, I understand. I think I understand what you're saying now about men, about boys letting go of separating from the mother and being on their own and doing stuff.
It gave me a great deal of compassion for men. It truly did. I mean, that's a hard space. It gave me a lot of compassion for men. And this actually came out of a book that I could go dig out for you fairly quickly if you want. A psychologist who was looking at abuse and why that relationship existed. And her hypothesis is exactly that when a man cannot integrate the feminine and it's outside, it becomes very powerful, very dangerous, and very scary. And so the need to control that, and also the need to want it, which is what that abusive relationship is. I love you passionately. I care about you. And damn, don't you do that to me. Because they feel that conflict because it's not integrated inside. They're trying to integrate it out there. So they need their partner as part of that integration. And then that partner becomes powerful. They see the need. It's just scary. It's a whole really convoluted thing. So it gave me a great deal of compassion about that. And it's just a piece that we don't ever talk about. I mean, that's the only person I've ever heard talk about that. Well, and it's so fundamental.
I forget the guy's name. There was a poet who was leading a men's.
Robert Bly.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's not as if it hasn't been attempted. But it would sometimes become a little silly, at times, because people took people took the mythological forms too seriously.
Well, and it's still external.
And they started, yeah, it was like externalizing as opposed to just really getting into it, finding out where that pain, where it itched, where the pain was, getting into that, then getting into it further because you haven't really reached the bottom. And Bly would talk about that, but that's not the program that got assimilated by different men. They'd have these men's groups and they'd come together, and it's like
and they take care of the family, but the wife is still external. And what she cares about is still external, and that has highly valued is what we care about. Yeah,
that's what turned me off to being a hippie, is that they were more free love than they still treated their girlfriend like dirt.
Yes. Yeah.
We all have a right brain and a left brain. And when I need to, I back up into my right brain and see the whole thing from a systems point of view and have an understanding about it. The left brain cannot do that. And the right brain cannot do what the left brain does. When you need to go get something, get it. When you need to do something, do it. The right brain doesn't do that. But that's why it's so good to develop both sides.
You need to, you have to.
Yeah. I mean, I do think that the wisdom of some of the indigenous folks, where the women were given the ability to make and unmake the rulers, the chiefs, the heads of, because the women could see when the men were getting off track. And they had then the capacity, were given the power to say, you're out of here because you're just not doing it right. We need somebody new. That's a way of balancing that. We don't have a lot of skills in that.
Yeah.
We don't have a lot of thinking about how to go to use the wisdom of both of those right and left hemispheres on a very conscious basis, so that we can discern and see when we're going off and who's going off and how to bring that back into balance. I mean, that's something we don't do very well at all.
Look, I think I'd better get going.
Oh.
I think this discussion has been very, very potent. Thank you.
Oh, bless you. Have a great week.
Yeah.
Yes.
Have a great week coming up.
Weekend.
Big hug.
Bless you.
See you again soon.
Good.
Yeah.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.
Okay. Bye-bye.
You want to hang in there a little bit longer? Or?
Oh, we can. Yeah, I've got space today. Oh, Wednesday was just so crazy. I had 4 meetings and the windows.
And the windows.
So we had 4 guys running through here doing stuff and a dog going crazy, and it was just a mess.
Well, if they're putting in windows, seems like they could put in an easement. Is that what it's called?
Oh, they're not paying for it. The government's paying for this. This is all free to my landlord.
Right.
But the landlord would have to pay for the easement, yes.
Okay.
They would have enough. In fact, I'm sure they're getting enough in tax breaks to pay for the easement. It's their choice to be magnanimous or not. And that's a hard choice for them. They are not used to being magnanimous as landlords. Trust me, that is not the stance they come from. Mm-hmm. And I've been working on them for 8 years to soften a little bit, which they have, enough to allow me to trust that I could do this. But they are still the landlords. And there's something about receiving gifts. It's hard for people to receive gifts sometimes. They feel that they're owed, or they owe, that all that crap gets in there. So I don't know where they are with this, which is, I mean, I truly don't hold any emotion around it. I'm hopeful. And I'm perfectly willing to move. Like I said, I've wanted to move for a long time. It's just, it's much harder to do this when it's not of your volition.
Of
That makes it a much harder space. And that's kind of where we are. So I'm just doing the things I need to do, but it really is divergent. Moving is a big deal anyway, on the
Oh,
best
it's
of
so big. It's
circumstances.
one of it's up there with death and divorce.
And yeah, and yes, moving, yes, just, and as you get older, I think it gets harder. There's
Well,
not as
yeah,
much energy and all of that. So it's, it's just where we are. It's just where we are.
yeah.
So yeah, so and I don't know what it's going to look like yet. And if they put in the window, would we stay? And it's like, well, if we put in the window, I wouldn't feel like we'd have to move right now. But there's still a part of me that says we need to go. So
Because you're right.
no, I need more nature than I have here. There's that. And there's just sometimes I feel like there's a calling to be somewhere else.
Okay.
I mean, I felt like that when I was in Boulder. And when I finally said, all right, let me listen to it, because I didn't want to move. I had no intentions of leaving Boulder. I owned my house. I could afford it. I loved it. I liked the space. I had enough nature. Everything was fine. Why would I want to leave? But it came up that I used my pendulum to say, all right, where in the world am I supposed to go? And Spokane came up. And I went, really? So I tried to move to Spokane for 2 years and it never quite gelled. And then it came up again a couple of years later. And I said, all right, if you want me out of here, I have to sell my house for this price by this date. The day before the house sold.
Uh-huh.
So I did that, but there was more energy. I mean, I felt supported in this. So far, it's just a big mess. I feel like there's a change. I don't know what it's going to look like, whether we're going to stay here or go somewhere else, whether we're going to move to someplace else in Spokane, whether we're going to West Virginia, because West Virginia is the next place that sort of has come up as a place to be. I don't know. So it's just a big puddle right now. And it's hard to do other things in a puddle. So, yeah.
The only what comes to me, and I don't know how to put it into words, but I know you know what I mean, that the reorganization happens inside of you first, before you even know what the outside circumstances are that you'll have to organize around.
Well, that's kind of where I am. Yeah. I mean, I'm aware that there's change. I just don't know what it looks like yet.
no.
So you just make all these, efforts until you see where the energy goes.
As you scope out your living space inside of you,
Mm-hmm.
and become aware of and make whatever adjustments, and I don't know, you'll be guided.
Oh, I always am. I'm not
No.
worried about or any of that. It's just I'm not yet. That's all. And I'm trying to do stuff with the cards, and that costs money and attention and time. And I need, if I'm going to be different, I have to have more income, because the income I've got doesn't meet the outside experience at all at this point. And so what does that look like, and how does that happen? And I've not been ever real successful at that. So I've found somebody through Earth Regenerators, who is part of Earth Regenerators, who is also part of a creative group that's trying to support other people in that same space. I don't know what she's going to cost. She's going to get back to me. So she's going to do a diagram of the cards. What does the model look like? And I don't have a diagram for the model. I have one I've created. It's not spectacular. It does put the whole model out there so people can see the whole. But anyway, so she's going to look at that. They're going to create something. So we'll see. We'll see. I don't know. I didn't know if I can afford it. And I told her that. I mean, my past experience has been when I make commitments like that, things shift out from under me and I can't keep them. And I've seen that happen a lot.
Yeah.
So I'm very cautious about making commitments like that because I just don't know. So.
Right. Because it could come in a flash to you how it should be.
Well, yeah, that hasn't happened. There's a part of my creativity that has not really risen to that occasion yet, shall we say. But I know it when I see it. So yeah, it's about money, and I've had lots of stuff with money in my life, and I've come a long way with it. I don't worry about it. I have right now sufficient for where we are. I don't have sufficient for going anywhere else. So if I'm supposed to go somewhere else, that has to happen. And so we'll just see. But it usually happens. I mean, I'm part of that happening. It has never well, that's not true. I mean, when I had cancer, I had a person whom I was on a board with. That's how I knew her. We didn't really know each other. And she just paid for my room, for my house for 18 months.
Oh my Lord.
So when I had cancer, I didn't have to worry about where I lived. Otherwise I would have, because I had no income.
Oh my, bless her forever.
Yeah. And she now has Alzheimer's and does not know who I am.
Oh, Jesus.
So yeah. So I mean, things happen. And so I know, and I don't know how they're going to happen. I never do. So I trust that. But there's the doing in the trust, and it churns until it works. And it's not there yet. At least I don't see it yet. So
I don't know if it will be helpful, but my recent lesson with the sign in my bathroom, God, thank you for everything. No complaints. It's like to remove that barrier in my heart from the management that did me wrong.
Yeah, well, that's why I don't hold them wrong at all.
Okay.
At all. There's no wrong in this. There's just trying to finesse through so that it is all right, and we're not there yet.
Yeah.
No, I don't have any negative aspects. I hope that she can find her heart, but if she can't, that's okay. I mean, that's her life. It's not mine. And I just need to still make my life, and we will.
Yeah. You're a trooper, and you're mature. If anybody can do it, you can.
It'll be fine. On the other side, it'll be all perfect. You'll see how all the pieces fit and made that happen. But we're not there yet. So
right.
So just a little murky.
I wish I could be helpful. And of course, I'm here as a sounding board and support anytime.
Thank you. So
all right.
Yeah. So yeah.
Okay. On with our day, huh? Bless you. Thank you for doing this. Okay, bye.
Okay.